Alrighty, fellas. Yo, what's up? My name is Petroski, and I think it is finally time to talk about the PokeMMO economy. This has been something that I've talked a lot about casually here and there in streams and in stream recaps and in passing discussion, but I haven't really sat down and had a really deep discussion about it, and I want to focus today on being as cordial as possible. I want to get better in 2026 personally. I have a lot to improve on in terms of how I handle discussions surrounding the game that I love very much. Passion is important, and passion has a place, but it's usually more important than ever when discussing opinions about a game to be accepting and open to altering views as well as opposing opinions, as well as just we need to be open to things so that we can improve our arguments and improve our discussion. If someone provides a counter argument that I cannot counter, I need to think on that for a lot more and decide, can I counter that argument, or do I need to adapt that into my argument, or do I need to adapt positions entirely? All right, so today, we're going to be covering a very long forum post. It's going to be a pretty droll video for a lot of people out there. This is very deep, nerdy, in-depth PokeMMO stuff regarding the PokeMMO economy. If you're a newer player and you're having fun with the game and you don't even notice this or care about this, hell yeah, more power to you. That is awesome. But I do think that this still affects you. I think this is honestly, I think this affects new players more than endgame players. It affects them more, but it affects them for less time because they might leave the game, as opposed to endgame players will be here for, 10 years or whatever, right? So there's a lot to discuss. Now, before we jump into Ginger Matt's post, I actually wrote up my own post before reading his post that I want to cover really quickly. This is a quick TLDR on the PokeMMO economy to catch people up if they aren't aware. I have not read Ginger Matt's post. It will be linked in the description, of course. There's a lot to talk about today. I have not read Ginger Matt's post, so I don't know what it says yet, but I wanted to give my thoughts before reading his, and then also jot down my thoughts and his points about the PokeMMO economy during his video. So first things first, this is my thesis or whatever. The problem with the PokeMMO economy, in my opinion, is that PokeMMO has a deflation problem where good IV Pokemon are super cheap right now. This has made 90% of catching for profit methods unviable, and it has hurt breeding for profit margins drastically, and has tanked the value of some 2x31 Pokemon from 40k all the way down to 15k at times. This is not if it was 2x31 star use or 2x31 genderless Pokemon, that would be one thing, right? But often, if I go check 31 attack and speed in the flying egg group, this used to be a 40k minimum, statted Pokemon, and right now that's a female only species. Let's go and hide female only species, 18k, right, for an alpha. This is not a female only. This is also Xatu is a desired hidden ability Pokemon. Now, it does not need that physical attack stat, but you could always use this as a breeder. That's the whole point of PokeMMO, is that the 31s should always have value because you can breed them onto other things. These Pokemon used to be 40k minimum. They are now 18k. They have dropped drastically in value over the past 2 years when alpha Pokemon were added to the game back around mid 2023, if I recall correctly. But even then, they were only beta tested, and they weren't permanently added until later 2023, or was it, maybe it was 2020? I'm confusing dates. It was around 2022 to 2023. Anyways, the suspected cause of this tank in value are heavily alpha spawns. I think alpha spawns is the big one. Alpha spawns, we've seen a swift decline in Pokemon value ever since alphas have been added. And it's pretty easy to see because alphas bring in a ton of good Pokemon into the game. If you don't know, alpha Pokemon are 2x31 guaranteed, whereas previously you'd have to catch Pokemon for about an hour and 15 minutes to get a 2x31 Pokemon. For reference, catching an alpha is the equivalent of farming like that for an hour and 15 minutes, because a 2x31 Pokemon is 1 in 78 chance on average, for those who don't know, and a 1x31 is 1 in 6 or so. Alphas are 2x31 guaranteed, so they bring in those 2x31 guaranteed, and also it's 1 in, you bring that next rate, it's about a 1 in 6 for an alpha to be, not quite, but about, for an alpha to be 3x31, and then 4x31. They have the 2x31 guaranteed, but they also bring in a ton of 3x, 4x, and 5x31 Pokemon into the game without any breeding necessary, and that breeding is what sinks good IV Pokemon out of the game. It's the same as bypassing a gold sink, which would be very problematic, right? A sink, for those who don't know, a sink in terms of an MMO is a mechanic that is literally designed to suck that resource out of the game to prevent inflation or deflation. The problem with deflation, once again, is it's just all supply and demand. We have too much supply of good IV Pokemon and too little demand, right? So one of the main suspected causes is alpha spawns. The second main suspected cause is mysterious balls. And I actually was late to adapting this. I did not realize how many 1x31 Pokemon were brought into Mysterious Balls until someone convinced me and showed me some data, as well as I opened some of my own Mysterious Balls for content like in later years. And you reach a point where like I was getting so many 1x31 Pokemon opened from Mysterious Balls, and it wasn't even worth my time to sell them because they'd be worth like 3 to 4K. And it's literally better to just go do higher end. We would just release those and go do better money making methods and make more Pokeyen per hour than selling the 1x31 Pokemon that you have, which is really, really crazy in my opinion. The third suspected cause is a lack of demand. We do not have enough permanent raids. Now, I think with the addition of, the Meloetta raid recently, the Cresselia raid, the Heat, I want to give credit where credit's due. We do have 3 permanent raids right now in PokeMMO, which is very, very good for the game. Very good for needing endgame content and PVM Pokemon. And as well as, I think the rotating holiday raids are I would say they get better. They're not great. They could improve a lot, but they still are good. They still you need like 30 Pokemon built. Like raids, imagine this problem without the raids we have right now, and that's a really interesting discussion. We need to appreciate that when we can, right? Like this problem would be so much worse if we didn't have holiday raids, and that's a scary thought, right? If the demand was still only certain endgame activities like Jimmy runs, the Red Refight, there was still PVM, but raids is like a next step, a next level of PVM. Let's be honest, right? So my solution for this is to nerf alphas, nerf Mysterious Balls, and add permanent raids, potentially rotating every single month, right? And I know that this gets really scary for a lot of people. Like some people just hate the word nerf, but I want to qualify. To nerf something is not to make the game harder. I think a lot of players hear the word nerf and they think that makes it harder for the player. When in reality, if you nerf alphas and nerf Mysterious Balls, the good IV Mons coming in, not the shiny ray, right? If you nerf these two things, it now opens up breeding for profit once again. It now opens up, or at least my hypothesis of this, right? It would potentially open up breeding for profit, open up catching for profit, which that allows new players. Catching for profit is one of the best new player activities. I think new players have been hurt some of the most by alphas coming into the game and wreaking havoc on the economy, whereas new players can't go consistently make money anymore. I had a challenge series called Making 1 Million Pokeyen from Scratch, where I was able to make a new account and make 1 million Pokeyen catching for profit on a brand new account in 1 day, right? I don't think I could do that anymore because Alpha kind of destroyed the value. When a new player asks me, hey, I have like 1 or less region done, how should I make Pokeyen? My answer is go get more regions done, skip early game money making, and just go to mid game. There aren't a lot of, if any, new game money making methods anymore. It's now become just skip the early game and go straight to mid game. And even then, we have less. I think the growing frustrations in the player base with people feel stuck and unable to make Pokeyen because there are less viable methods, right? Because people are pigeonholed into trainer reruns, gym reruns, pure yen methods. We can't rely on catching for profit, and catching for profit it's so many Pokemon. That's the beauty of it. If you go watch my old videos, I have catching Pidovs for profit, catching Pidgeys, Spearows, Dinos, Torkoals, Pikachus. You could catch any Pokemon. That was the beauty. You could almost catch any Pokemon in the entire game and make like 150k plus Pokeyen per hour. It was a really cool time. You could go catch your favorite Pokemon, make decent Pokeyen, shiny hunt, and have a good time. And then mid game players, the early game players would catch for profit. The mid game players would buy those catches and breed them, and then the end game players would either like flip them or EV train, XP train, or make profits there, or the mid game players would do that with the end game players. Like it was like a really beautiful, legitimate instance of like trickle up economy where players kind of, I know it's like but like players, like everyone had a part, everyone was doing something valuable in the economy. And I feel like right now the new players don't have a strong part in the economy, which that sucks. That's not good in my opinion. Anyways, so in my opinion, these 3 changes would be really helpful and really important, and the impact would be, it would make catching for profit come back, it would make breeding for profit come back, giving newer players and mid-level players more consistent money making, as opposed to just going to catch the alphas every 6 hours, right? And even then, like with the alphas, like you might wait 6 hours for an alpha spawn, it'd be a Kangaskhan, and you go make 5k, 15k, maybe you lose money on timer balls, right? Like versus catching for profit, breeding for profit giving you more control in your money making process as a newer mid game player. It adds a more it would hopefully had the positives of the impact have a more sustainable endgame content and economy. Hidden ability Pokemon would have an increase in base value since less people would go to alphas. And alphas, I think alphas being nerfed from like 2x31 either to 1x. There's a lot of ways to nerf alphas. You either nerf the frequency which they occur and then increase the duration. So for example, right now you have like 3 alpha spawns a day. And they last like an hour and 15 minutes each. You could reduce that to 1 alpha spawn a day and then have it last 3 to 6 hours to make sure that people who aren't online at that time have a chance of going to get it. Or you could just hard nerf the IVs and take it from 2x31 down to 1x31. Mods, feel if anybody's like not having, once again, if anybody's not having charitable discussion, yeah, feel free to handle whatever you see fit. It's really important just to have open discussion and not insult others for any, we're just trying to have it good. Not that, yeah, not that I'm just saying, just in case that happens. I haven't seen that happen yet, thankfully. Thank you, chat. Now a big problem right now as well is like it is a positive. Now I will say, I want to counter argue myself. A positive of the current PokeMMO economy is that it is cheaper right now for new players to buy things. It's cheaper right now for new players to get into PvP, to get into PVM, which is really, really important and super, super worth noting. However, a lot of new players are building these Pokemon, building these Brelums, building these Starmies, building these competitive and PVM Pokemon, and then their value decreases. They consistently lose value because at this current rate, once again, we just have too many good IV Pokemon coming into the game too quickly, and it's not enough demand, not enough sinks consuming them from the game. It's going to cause good IV Pokemon to go down in price infinitely for the rest of time, in my opinion. That's the fear, right? And there are some outliers, like there are some mons that are doing well, like the 31 attack IV Adamant Crocodiles are like probably 40 to 60k. There are things doing well. It's not all doom and gloom, but I think there's a massive lack of variety right now in money making methods, which that makes MMO players feel very, very stuck and burnt out, in my opinion. Now this is on both sides, actually. This is the positives of the change. One of the positives and negatives is that it would nerf alt accounts that farm alphas. I think this is, once again, both a positive and a negative. To finish up, we're going to move on to Ginger Matt's post. I'm going to give that in a quick sec, but to finish up the negatives of my potential changes, so to argue against myself, right? Less people would go to alpha spawns as they are less profitable. Less newer players would be, getting free competitive Pokemon from Mysterious Balls, and then getting into raids and PvP becomes, I think it's really important, it becomes as expensive as it was before. It's not that if you have the perspective of you join, like right now, you can buy a 5-time, I think visual examples are really, really important. You can buy a perfect Starmie right now for a stupid price. And now this is kind of a niche outlier because Starmies and Star U's were just brought into the game at a ridiculous pace due to the Xmas event, but they should not be able to be this cheap. 5x31 Star U is under 185k. We've reached a point where these Pokemon are cheaper than the cost of braces, right? It's kind of like if you know RuneScape, imagine if in old school RuneScape, a rune plate body was cheaper than the high alchemy value. That would immediately be like, oh, what the crap is going, what the fuck is going on, right? That's a huge problem. You can just go buy those and alch them, right? But we don't really have that alch process in PokeMMO, Mons have lost value, and it's good in a way for new players to get into the game, but it's not good for sustain. It is also, it just kind of shorts the end game content. It's fun and it's nice for new players to be able to get into PvP and raids quickly to some extent. Accessibility is important and must be mentioned, but too much accessibility is a problem. You don't want players buying all of the raid Pokemon, all the PvP Pokemon, doing the activities, and then beating the game in like a year and then quitting and moving on. Like, PokeMMO is meant to be a long-term grind. I think it's okay for players to spend a while to build up their Pokemon and spend a while to develop their resources. That's the fun of the game. If you don't enjoy that, I understand that, but that's a lot of the fun is developing your account, right? It's kind of like in World of Warcraft. I hate that you can buy a level 60 character, right? I understand the arguments. I feel free to disagree respectfully. I understand, but the real content is raids and blah, blah, blah. I personally respectfully disagree. I like the leveling process in World of Warcraft, and I think having that ability, I think being able to skip that is a huge detriment, the same way I feel like this is happening a little bit here. Not that it's pay to win, not that it's that bad, so that's my notepad document, my overview, my quick overview of the economy. Let's now finally jump into what Gingermat has to say. I have not read this. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go through it step by step. I'm going to have a notepad document up over on the side where I will be writing down notes that I find relevant. Okay. Let's go ahead and not start a new topic. Let's go back. Okay. Thank you for the follow. Hello, I am Ginger Matt, and I play this game and many other MMOs way more than anyone should be considered healthy. Over the years, I've built up a lot of experience in how MMOs work, how they're played, and how different games have different successes with their economy. When it comes to PokeMMO, I've played 14.5k hours since I started in 2022. This game has taken over and become my main game / obsession. So there's two ways you can view. Wow, what a no life. Someone was just saying he like plays a lot while working. Like he's a very healthy individual, even though he plays a lot of games. I'm a big advocate of saying like you can play a lot of games or do a lot of. You can spend your hours pursuing whatever passions that you have, as long as you're not hurting anybody, as long as you're taking care of yourself, as long as you're doing your work, taking showers, eating well, as long as you're taking care of yourself. I'm a big advocate of I don't care how you spend your time. If anything, spending your time to pursue your passions is a really important part of being human and a really important part of like feeling alive. So I'm a big fan of stuff like this as long as you're doing it healthily, right? I doubt the shower part. Yeah, understandable. Okay. Over the last few months, we've seen more and more comments about the issues with the PokeMMO economy. Many players struggling with changes to make money-making methods, and with more and more players resorting to buying RP to sustain their gameplay. It's caused the economy to end up in a weird state. Yeah, my overview we didn't even touch dittos. We didn't even touch reward points, right? It's caused the economy to end up in a weird state with lower profits for money-making methods, lower RP prices than ever before, but still a high demand for resources like dittos. Yes, I think we're crunched on multiple sides, which is the problem. I'm not saying I have a foolproof method to fix the economy. This is very, very important. I'm not saying that I know better than the devs or other players. Very important. But I do have some thoughts on how we got here and some ideas on how I think we could improve the economy. One big disclaimer, this is purely from a Shiny Hunter's POV. Any PvPers who would like to comment on some of these changes would affect their side of the economy, I would love to hear it. This qualifications were already off to a really good, responsible conversation start. I started the game in July 2022, just after a 10-year anniversary event had ended, and in my eyes, the game's economy was in a much better state at the time. I couldn't agree more. There was a big issue of things like PvP or Jimmy Run teams being expensive for newer players, but as a newer player at the time, there were plenty of money-making methods around to grind on. I also in 2022, I'm trying to think, in 2022, things were decent. In 2023, I can speak on this. When Cyndaquil got moved to Johto, I did a video showing newer players because people complain about the cost of Jimmy Run's teams. And I understand because, it's a big barrier. It's a big, thing to unlock, right? Jimmy Run teams used to cost around 600k. I think now they cost like 300k, and they could do it for even cheaper. I did a video in 2023 breeding up Cyndaquils and showing you how to make your own Jimmy Run team, and I was able to make my own Jimmy Run team for under 100k Pokeyen back in 2023. So there were ways to make them cheaper if you took your time and bred your own Pokemon, for example, put in more work, right? But I think it's also okay to have a big unlock. It's also okay to have a big unlock like a Jimmy Run team, which changes how you view Pokeyen to be a difficult unlock, in my personal opinion. That those progress, benchmarks should be there. Not everything should be super easy. Also, not everything should be super hard. It's finding that balance, right? Shortly after joining, I think the Halloween 2022 update introduced alphas, and to me this was the first step towards the issue we're seeing today. There were people who thought that alphas were going to ruin the economy, right when this update happened, and I was a big advocate of no, don't worry about that, it's way too soon. I see what you're saying, maybe. My opinion was I'm sure the devs have thought about this, and if it ever becomes an issue, I'm sure the devs will change it. And unfortunately, I do think I was wrong there. I think the devs have let this slide for too long. I love that, respectfully, I think they've let this happen. I do think they've been a little bit negligent when it comes to the alpha economy. Unfortunately, they've been busy with other things. I get it. But I think it's at the point now where we're crunched on so many sides that it's the economy. I think if we made a nerf to alphas back in 2024, in the event season, late 2024, if we nerfed alphas, I think we could have avoided so much of the exacerbated problems. But I think now we've got a lot more problems. Yeah, the first alphas were tested in the anniversary event in mid 2022, and then the later ones, and I think the Halloween, I could be wrong, remember as well, my memory is not amazing. I believe in Halloween that's when they introduced the 2x31 ones, but I could be wrong. But I remember people talking about how the 2x31s could hurt the economy, but I think that was too early, and now we're too late. So it's a tough, but never too late to fix it, but we've caused more damage than we needed to, in my opinion. It's hard to find an exact place to start, as there are many small parts to play that create the bigger problem. First, in my eyes, there are two ways to make money by playing an MMO. Passively playing and actively farming. I love that he brought this up. I love the different play styles of playing a game. Passively farming is making money as you're playing the game for fun. An example of PokeMMO is just catching Pokemon at a spot you want a shiny at, while for World of Warcraft, it's extra money you make from quests and dungeons that you do when you're trying to achieve a greater goal. Actively farming is something like Ditto farming or Jimmy Runs that drags you away from what you mostly want want to do in the game. And this is an interesting point. A healthy MMO economy has a balance of both. I couldn't agree more. And I think it's fair to, like, if you're, obviously, I'll probably mention this, passive farming should make less Pokeyen than active farming, for sure. But both should be, like, viable for different reasons. All right. Has a balance of both. I think a healthy MMO economy should have a balance of both. And I think the PokeMMO economy has lost this over the years, pushing people who would have been happy passively farming into active money-making methods or just flat-out swiping, just to continue playing the game at all. My theory revolves around the idea that damaging passive moneymakers forces more players into active money-making or swiping. This is not something that I've thought about much, so let me actually write this down. Passive money-making, I want to say destroyed, has been nerfed, hurt, pushing players to more active activities they don't necessarily, you can flame my spelling, want to do politely. I think that's a really important point. When I talk about catching for profit, now you could, like, go to PDubs, you could just go to wherever, you could do many things and make decent money per hour. And I'm sure he'll mention coming up, I think he talked about if I recall, like, I think he mentions Dratini and, like, that payday spot. We'll see that in here in a quick sec. My theory, okay, blah blah, which causes those to be sorry, excuse me. My theory revolves around the idea that damaging passive moneymakers forces more players into active moneymakers or swiping, which causes those to be overfarmed, killing off and narrowing down the list of viable money-making methods until a large portion of the community are farming the exact same methods or swiping, which has hurt the price of RP. Less viable. That's something I touched on, but for, like, slightly different reasons. Less viable money-making methods narrows further and further over time from over farming. I couldn't agree with this more. I think that's a really, like, that's a great point. It's like a growing tornado that just keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger. When you narrow down the amount of money-making methods that are effective or efficient. Thank you for the subs. Wow, Ace. I'll thank you for that properly after this discussion. But thank you so much. Wow. When you narrow down the money-making methods already, it's now going to necessarily narrow down more and more and more because people are going to gravitate towards those, over-farm them. They become a little bit less viable, and it kind of just, it perpetuates this cone of, like, getting less and less viable money-making methods. That's a great point. To fix the problem, I think we need to introduce more money-making methods and to limit / nerf the parts that are damaging the economy. This is, I think, once again, I've read, like, skimmed through a little bit, but this is, like, pretty much what I said of, like, I think we need to nerf alphas and mysterious balls, which will then open up other parts of the economy and add permanent raids, which will, once again, like, introducing new money-making methods as well as nerfing the ones to bring the other ones in line, right? When I first started playing the game in summer of 2022, I was much more of a passive farmer. I would spend my days at work catching Pokemon I saw on Eevee Route 17. Like, this is such a throwback. Like, you could just go farm Eevees, passively shiny hunt Eevee while also making some decent Pokeyen. You would sort 31s at the end of the day, sell them and the items, etc. And across an 8 to 9 hour shift, I would end up with 1.5 to 2 million Pokeyen, just passively farming while shiny hunting. He even says that. All while progressing towards my main goal of building my account by buying teams and starting to egg hunt Eevee someday. This was enough to progress slowly. I would do my daily gym reruns to speed that up and the occasional trainer rerun. And then combined, it was enough to get what Lepa hunts I wanted and to do a few egg batches throughout the week. So I had something to hatch mid World of Warcraft raids. When alphas were introduced, quite quickly the profits from this daily activity dropped from 1.5 mil minimum to less than a mil a day by the start of 2023. Alphas introducing guaranteed 31s on Pokemon killed off the regular 31 market over time. The chaos of 31 IV Pokemon, I'm going to write down. His EV farm went from 1.5 mil to 1 mil a day in how long? In like 1 year, by the start of 2023. But not even that. That's actually, so summer of 2022, let's see. Didn't the change happen in like events? It was like 4 months. In a few months. I'm pretty sure alphas were added I believe alphas were added late 2022, late 2022, and then it says by the start of, I think, event season 2022 was when they were added, if I recall correctly. So like, yeah, someone said 6 months. Yeah, like a few months. Let's say 3 to 6. In 3 to 6, because I don't know the exact, but that's a lot. To imagine your money making method dropping, 50% in effectiveness in 3 to 6 months, when it's been working for a long time, and it's due to, that's pretty, that happens occasionally if things are overfarmed. But if things are overfarmed and they're really popular, that happens. It's normal, and that makes sense for a money making method to go down and then go back up. People weren't overfarming Eevee, right? This was not reduced because people were overfarming Eevee. It was reduced because everything got reduced. Like, I'm gonna take a pause from this post to talk about, ramble a little bit, but like the way the PokeMMO economy should work, in my opinion, and historically has worked, is a method becomes really popular, like breeding Garchomps for profit. Everybody kind of like slowly learns about that. Everybody starts breeding Garchomps for profit. They make 300k Pokeyen per hour breeding Garchomps for profit. Everybody finds out about that. Slowly, there's less pieces of the pie as more people try to do it. That profit goes down. But while everyone's breeding Garchomps for profit, well, all of a sudden, people forgot about Ferrothorn, and Ferrothorn's popping up in the OU metagame Poggies, so people, Ferrothorn, really easy to catch. All of a sudden, Ferrothorn becomes really good to like breed or catch for profit. So that is like trickling up as people focus on Garchomps, and then people move on to that, and then that goes down, and then basically the same thing happens over and over and over again. And then you go through a few cycles. Let's say you go Garchomps, the hype Pokemon, Ferrothorn, this blah blah blah, and then eventually yeah, no, hopefully I'm not, he wasn't just catching EVs. Hopefully that was clear, but apologies. If I came off like he was only catching EVs, yeah, that's not, yeah. I'm assuming he was just catching Pokemon on that route. That's what I assumed, but if I didn't make that clear, I appreciate the correction. That should be, yeah, not just farming EVs, but farming at the EV route. Let me say his EV route farm. Sure. Apologies, that's, my apologies. But like generally how it works is, Garchomps, the like main focus, then Ferrothorn, and then Conkeldurr and Volcarona, and then then Garchomp goes back up. Garchomp goes back up over time if people forget about it or let it reset. So that happens very often. But what alphas did is that, so like usually in PokeMMO, it's one money making method going up while others, or one method trickling downward as it's overfarmed while all the other ones go up. What alphas did is they made everything go down. Literally everything started like trickling down all at the same time, and that's why it's so scary, because it affects everything. All right, because alphas are just every age group. It's not just one economy. It's every age group. It's every Pokemon. It's absolutely everything, right? Which is also why it's so scary versus like if just one thing was. It's why like alphas need to be balanced and dittos need to be balanced, because dittos can breed with every Pokemon. If good IV dittos are too cheap, that's another thing we'll talk about here in a quick sec. But if good IV dittos, let's go check. If good IV dittos are too cheap, it means that necessarily almost every other Pokemon has to be cheaper, right? If a 31 HP ditto is 5k, every other 31 HP A group breeder has to be less than 5k, which that's really bad. So we need to implement changes to where good IV dittos go up in value, and here's the tricky part, but also shittos either go down in value or stay the same. And that's why we're crunched from both angles, because how do we make it so if you make it harder to farm dittos, okay, that frustrates the player base, number one, which is important to factor in. Number two, it might make good IV dittos go up if you slow down the catching of dittos. But then, if you slow down the catching of dittos, it's going to make shittos go up in value. It's one of the craziest parts of the Pokemon economy is that a 31 HP IV ditto is almost the same cost as a shitto. Not even, look at this. If I look up the cheapest, no, it's not even almost, it's the same. These 31 attack IV dittos are literally the same price as these shittos. For those who don't know, shittos are used for rare shiny hunting, so they'll always have a good base value. Because of that, they should not be the same value as the IVs. That's insane. That shows me that like there's just, once again, way too much supply of good IV Pokemon and not enough demand to suck them out. Dittos, I don't know how to, the problem is, once again, I don't know how to fix it. That one's really, really hard. I think that one's one of the toughest changes, is how do you make good IVs more valuable, as well as, it's a really, really tough call, as well as make shittos not explode in price because they're already so expensive. I think repeat balls could be buffed. I agree. Buff max catch rate of repeat balls to 3 times and nerf the entrance rate of 2 alphas to, yeah, I think yeah. Okay, let's continue on. We're back to the Ginger Manifesto. Alrighty, where were we at is the sorry for losing track, but he was doing the EV farming. Alpha's introducing guaranteed 31s, kill off all 31 markets over time. The Chaos 31 IV mons were selling for. So he specifically cites a specific example. The Chaos Egg Group 31 IV Pokemon I was selling was for, so like Grimers over at the EV spot, 12 to 20k. They are now worth 5 to 8k. Look at that difference. From everything's been nerfed by like over 100% or over 50%. I'm terrible at math, but like from 12 to 20k each IV mod now to 5 to 8k, killing off a huge part of the profit. This pushed me into more and more active money making methods. So frisk thieving, payday pickupping, and finally ditto farming. Alphas being introduced solved a problem of expensive PvP in Jimmy Run teams. I love that he mentioned, like, you have to argue against yourself. To truly have a strong position, you have to be able to argue against yourself and then overcome those arguments. But it also started to kill off any passive money-making methods that the game had. The idea of simply catching Pokemon for small profits was mostly gone. I think removing guaranteed 31 IVs from the alphas would be among the first steps to fixing the PokeMMO economy. There is a downside that catching alphas wouldn't be as profitable as before, and that is a popular way of making Pokeyen. I think a big portion of the alpha's current value isn't just the IVs, but also in the shiny hunting aspect of it. People will still breed alphas together to shiny hunt, yes, so that certain males of egg groups will always hold a base value. Taking them out of the economy and over time, I don't think base alphas would take too much of a hit. As a bonus, I have no idea. It'd be a tough one to predict. As a bonus, after a while, alphas with 31s would be worth more than a base mon with 31s if there are less 31s coming to the game. Yes, this is how it should be. An alpha Pokemon that has stayed its alpha-ness and has hidden ability access should be worth more, and that's how it was when they first came out, should be worth more than a random 2x31. That has changed over time because alphas come into the game so fast that they're actually cheaper than like bred up 2x31s or wild caught 2x31s. Okay. If there are less 31s coming into the game from alphas, regular 1x31 Pokemon value would slowly increase from their current low. It would take time. That's the other thing, is like, if we make these changes, it's not going to happen overnight where like catch for profit comes back and everybody gets met. You know, it's going to take time. Markets take a long time to adjust, right? The second issue with 31s at the moment is ditto farming. And that's one I'll admit I've been a culprit of, farming dittos on 3 to 4 accounts. But you got don't hate the player, hate the game, hate the balancing, in my opinion, right? Not that you actually hate it, but, you know, don't take issue with the player, take issue with the balancing of the game. Is that fair? Ditto farming has remained one of the best money making methods in the game throughout the last few years, as other methods saw their profits decrease, and even after nerfs, ditto profits have remained relatively steady. Although ditto box prices have gone up, the profits have remained similar. This is simply supply and demand. And with egg shiny hunting, dittos have arguably the best sink in the entire game, and that's protected ditto farming from the issue that has plagued other methods like payday and pickup. Over time, this has led to more and more players ditto farming, especially on their alt accounts, which has brought with it more 31s into the economy. It's once again, yes, I like that he talked about this snowball effect of one problem exacerbating other issues, and it's snowballing and snowballing and snowballing, which on the bright side and on the positive side, it also means, in my opinion, once you make the positive changes, like nerfing alphas, the positives will snowball. So even though it will take time, I wonder if I'm overestimating how much. I wonder if it'll actually fix decently quickly because of that snowball power, right? Currently, when pricing dittos, I check for 2x31 and 1x31s with good nature. Anything with a 31 HP defense def or 1x31 unnatured, I just sell as a shitto for egging. I would literally lose profit if I tried to pull them out and sell them separately. A noticeable consequence of overfarming dittos, it has started to affect the 31 IV shiny market with an overabundance. I haven't even thought about this. This is more in depth that, you know, let's write this down here. This is a good one to write down. Alphas and ditto problems snowball into every other IV economy. And then 31 IV dittos not worth selling separately. There's just so many problems here. A lot of the big points. And then I haven't thought about this. The 31 shiny IV economy has been affected by the over farming of dittos. All right. A noticeable consequence of overfarming Dittos has started to affect the 31 IV market with an overabundance of shiny Dittos because more and more players are Ditto farming. Although I think Ditto farming is contributing to the issue, I don't think nerfing it directly. I agree with this. I don't think nerfing it directly is the solution. I think yes, I think encouraging other farming methods and making other things viable to naturally pull players away from Dittos is the way to go. I almost want to like copy paste this. I'm just stealing his idea. I could not agree more with this. Yes. I think Ditto farming does not need to be nerfed. I think other things need to be nerfed to pull in line with it. And that, once again, players get really scared whenever anybody recommends a nerf to a game. I notice so many YouTube comments, and maybe it's, I'm just listening to the loud minority, but so many people get pissed off when you mention nerfs at all. But they don't, in my opinion, they don't realize the point of nerfing is to make other things better. We're not nerfing alphas to make alphas harder for the sake of making it harder. We're nerfing alphas to bring back catching for profit, breeding for profit, to open up the economy and allow for all of these other money-making methods. Okay. Oof. That brings me to the issue of supply and demand in the game, and one that most MMOs struggle with to an extent. Going back to 2022 and 2023, when alphas were starting to damage the passive method of catching Pokemon, it meant myself and others started to actively try to make money. For me, this was picked up in Payday. I spent 10 hours at the 5 most popular spots to collect some data and started farming. Over the months, I started to notice profits dipping from silver powders, and revival herbs from Pattern Bush started to drop in price. Leftovers, I haven't even thought about the item economy. Leftovers went from 60 to 80k to less than 20k each. I have noticed that certain items have been dropping in price, and I didn't know why. Leftovers, and that's a good point. That's what's, man, I'm not a doomsayer. I'm not a negative Nancy. I'm not someone who, there's a lot of people like that. I think the PokeMMO economy is in a detrimental state. I think it is in a A or S tier level of emergency. I think the PokeMMO economy needs emergency help. I think it is really, really in trouble. And I think a dying economy or a dead economy results in a dying or dead MMO. Even though I don't think PokeMMO is really dying, I think that the economy, in the future, if it ever does have problems, it's because of that, right? In my opinion. Yeah, look at leftovers. Leftovers used to be 40k, and prices don't need to stay the same forever, but from 40 to 60 to 80k down to 16k is pretty crazy. It's pretty severe, right? And the devs have made changes, like making the storyline, leftovers untradeable to purposefully not address that issue, right? Anyways, back to spent hours without item syncs, plenty of items just get overfarmed until they hit a base vendor price, which is something you see at the moment with things like King's Rocks, Charcoals, Black Glasses, Quick Law, and Miracle Seed. I would even go something. Let me actually add to this. I think a big reason that the PokeMMO economy is having problems is because, this is like the optimist in me, I guess, is because of the game's growth. It's because of the game's growth, because we have seen way more players than we ever expected to since 2021. From 2021 to 2026, we have seen an insane resurgence and a renaissance in PokeMMO. I always say, back in 2021, the highest subscribed to YouTuber that made PokeMMO content was 3,000 subscribers. And I'm lucky enough to now almost be at 75,000 subscribers. And that's not, I always say, I was lucky. I was at the right time, right place. I'm not, I love the game. I played for a long time. I don't consider myself super special. I think anybody could have done what I did. I think it is more of a testament of the game's growth than my ability to be that interesting of a content creator. I think the game has grown, or best case scenario, a mixture, right? I think the game has grown a ton. It has grown so much over the past 5 years. And I think because of that, and also players have gotten better, right? Players weren't alt account farming in that way. Players have gotten so much better at playing PokeMMO, and that's contributed to the economy. And it's on the developer's job. It's the player's job. We can't stop getting better. It's the developer's job to rebalance the game and fix the economy based on what the players are doing. And I think it's time for them to respectfully adjust things, in my opinion. All right. I'm already worrying about the IRL economy. Don't bother with in-game economics. You are the most reasonable, not turbo online based. I respect the hell out of that sentiment. You do not. I totally get it. I love this game, and I'm lucky to have the mental capabilities to worry about this game and talk about it. I think it's awesome to care about things. There's nothing wrong with caring about, but I understand, you know, much love to you. Have a great day, dude. There's a few ideas that I thought would be helpful for the game, and I would introduce some item syncs to the game. I haven't read this. The first, we've needed a legendary sync forever. The first idea I've had involves shiny hunting legendaries. At the moment, there is no legendary sync in the game, and the monthly rotating legendaries have been dropping in price each rotation. Yeah, there's so many, once again, so many economic problems that we have to solve, which is the scary part, I guess. We have to just take it one step at a time, one nerf, one buff, one update, one patch at a time. We can fix this. Let me qualify. The PokeMMO economy is in a emergency state. Personally, I believe it's been worse. I think back in 24, the PokeMMO economy is in a bad state, a straight up bad state. Having said that, the game is still remaining decently popular and still doing well. This was not the case back in like 2014, 2015, 2016. I witnessed the game actually almost dying, the economy actually in shambles, and the player base actually like fucking turbo declining. That was scary when like the player base was down to like a guesstimated, and I don't know the numbers, this is just guesstimate. I would guesstimate the player base back then was down to like 3,000 concurrent players at times, where I feel like PokeMMO is still probably pulling anywhere from like 10 to 30K. Like we're still doing much that. That's like online at one time. We're still doing much better today than we were back then, right? The game is so much more popular, but that does not mean there aren't problems to solve, right? There very clearly are. All right. At the moment, there is no legendary sync in the game in the monthly drop-in price. One way to solve this problem and to help other sections of the economy, I love the two birds, one stone, is an idea to make legendary eggs. Using Moltres as an example, a new method to bring some Moltreses, maybe 25 to 50 charcoals. Ooh, involving the item sync into it is really interesting. I love this idea. Imagine taking 25 to 50 charcoals per egg over to Mount Ember. You consume 2 Moltreses and some charcoals to get a Moltres egg. How special would that feel as well? I love that. Over time, this would help. I've never thought about this. This would help Moltres prices from dropping while also introducing a reason for players to go out and farm charcoals on the side. It's also insane. Right now, you can't farm. Some players might say, oh my God, that'll make farming legendaries so expensive. Right now, you literally can't do it. Like farming shiny legendaries, excuse me. Right now, you literally can't shiny hunt legendaries in PokeMMO. You kind of can. You can like do your one legendary hunt every month, or like I guess 2 hunts every month, right? But that's it. And that takes a it's 20 hours. You spend 40 hours a month for 2 encounters. We've calculated out, this is not possible in a human lifetime, right? Like this is, right now in PokeMMO, you cannot target shiny hunt a legendary. You have to just randomly run into it and hope for the best, right? But the idea of implementing a proper legendary shunt alongside helping the economy is perfect. Another more extravagant solution could be introducing something to combine with Leppa berries, miracle seeds, or silver powder, for example, to make some kind of special Leppas. Let me write down actually. Moltres plus charcoal sync for legend shunting eggs. Okay. Combining Leppas with miracle seeds or silver powders to make some sort of special Leppa berry, which again could be used for something like an extra mon in the horde pool, or giving it a very low chance for the horde to be secret. I don't know how I feel about requiring a special. I like the idea of enhanced Leppas, like enchanted Leppa berries. That's kind of fucking cool, right? I don't know how I feel about requiring those enchanted Leppas for some kind of extra mon in the horde pool, unless it did something similar to like premium lures, where you had a rare chance to get like Trico, like a Trico ×3 horde at some location, or like so. That could be kind of interesting, but you want to be careful with that, not to over buff those shunts as well. I'm a little more hesitant on how this could be balanced. I think it could be difficult. Now, making it having it the ability to have hordes have a secret shiny, I think that's cool. I think that could secret shinies are already so rare. I think it's totally fine to do something like that, but you'd have to make it still so that single encountering is still the better method to go for secrets, in my opinion. Using other MMOs as examples, every MMO has something similar to a GTL fee. Most of the time, it's percentage based rather than a flat fee cap. This is something that I've talked about. Before I read his thing, I've talked about for a long time, making the I think that we could even lower. I think lowering the listing fee on the GTL from 1K down to even like 500, like a little bit lower, and then raising the percentage. Because right now, if you list a thing for like 2 billion Pokeyen, I think you still only get like a 25K fee. They might have changed that recently, to be fair, but I like the idea of having that scaling a bit more and taxing. It sounds taxing the higher end players of PokeMMO a little bit more. As a higher end player on the main accounts, like we can take it to help the economy. It's okay. We can take the hit. I think it's totally fine. In some games like OSRS, devs use the money collected from this tax. This is something that I don't know why we're not doing this in PokeMMO. I think this is actually fucking insanely genius. Well, kind of. The only downside is it gets rid of a gold sync to some extent. But in some games like OSRS, devs will use the money collected from this tax and use it to buy out items from the GTL that are overfarmed, and then like deleting those items. I think that's really interesting. The problem is, we don't have an inflation problem. An inflation problem is what most MMOs run into. Inflation where gold or Pokeyen or the currency over time becomes less and less. You have less and less purchasing power. So like prices go up. We have the opposite. We have a deflation problem, right? We don't have too much Pokeyen coming to the game. We have too much goods. We have too many goods and services coming into the game as opposed to Pokeyen, right? So this would utilize the fact that we don't have an inflation problem as of now, so we can take the hit and use one of our gold sinks, one of our Pokeyen sinks, like the breeding sink or the GTL tax or whatever, and utilize that to have a developer or the system go in, buy a bunch of this stuff. The players would get paid for their stuff, right? And then just delete them from the game and sync them out. I think that's utilizing one of our strengths, which is not having an inflation problem, and using it to solve one of our weaknesses, which is a deflation problem. Even just doing that, like imagine buying legendaries or buying 1x31 Pokemon off the GTL and manually deleting them or releasing them. I think is like a really, really genius idea for the devs to possibly look at. Okay. This gives them a really powerful tool to help balance. Let me write that down, actually. Devs could use a gold sync to buy and delete items / Pokemon. Okay, I think that is. We stretch this out. There we go. Perfect. Run out of space here, but that's okay. I think we'll get most of the points. All right. Back to blah blah blah. Another idea could be some sort of quest or notice board, something that gives out daily tasks. For example, bring me one box of 1x31 Chaos Egg Group Pokemon, or bring me 30 Nevermelt Ices. Players could get a variety of daily quests, encouraging players to buy and sell the mons and items needed, and introducing a whole new market. The problem is, what are the rewards? The rewards for this have to be like super worth it, and they can't be like pure yen for the most part, but I don't know, maybe we'll see. Maybe they could be. Devs could weigh certain things to be more common. It gives them a tool to change and balance the market. Yeah, I like the idea of having something they can constantly adjust. That's why I like raids. The way that raids are implemented right now, they're not permanent. I wish they would do like a permanent rotating raid. Heatran is cool, but once you have the Heatran raid team, like you're done, right? But like rotating raids every month, imagine having to constantly build and adjust. And like, let's say the Chaos Egg Group market is really bad. You could implement a raid that needs Chaos Egg Group Pokemon to beat it, and thus helping that economy. So having I think the raids are really underutilized, where like they shouldn't only be up during, this just takes time and energy, and to give credit where credit's due, a lot of the stuff we're saying the devs might have already thought about. It just takes time and energy and resources they don't have. That's how the world works, guys. That's a lot of it, is like people just not having the time and energy, which that's my greatest resource. I try to put out as many videos, as many streams, as many guides as possible, and there's tons of guides and there's tons of creative projects that I want to do for PokeMMO. I have projects that I've written down on a notepad document as far back as 2021 that I haven't gotten to, because I can only have so many hours in the day. So I'm sure the devs are kind of in a similar boat, to give them a little bit of leeway there, right? But yeah, the idea of having a tool that they can constantly adjust to help the market where need be, I think would be really, really, really cool. Rewards can be a box similar to PvP event rewards, a change to some unique. The rewards could be similar to PvP event rewards, a chance to have some unique vanities or a new mysterious ball. Overall, the idea behind introducing more item sinks to increase the prices of currently dead items and over time giving players more options and choices to actively money farm. This will pull some players who are currently farming Dittos across the world, farming different Pokemon and items, and reducing the pressure on 31 IV Dittos. Yes, having more viable money-making methods just helps balance out everything. There's also the problem of the 31 IV shiny market, the rare shiny market, which I think are suffering from two big problems. For regular non-31 IV shinies, I think the prices have tumbled and suffered because of the amount of people that are farming Dittos, both on their main accounts and their alt accounts, meaning that basic 31 IV shinies have dropped in price to below 31 IV shiny Dittos. Otherwise, there's no point in ever buying one. Rares, I think, have suffered from a different reason. When I first started playing, shiny hunting was already a popular activity, but I still saw the remains of the old shiny trading culture around. Apparently, before my time, it was more common for people to buy and sell rares. Yes, for like collectors. I think nowadays people have really come around to like OTs are one of the only respected things. By the time that I started playing, having an OT rare was worth more to most players, and by now, if it's not OT, most people don't really care that much at all. The culture of buying rares has changed. This has led to rare prices falling further and further over time without any real resolution. Personally, I'm not sure how big of an issue this would be over time, but I understand why some people will find it alarming. I do have a couple ideas on how to possibly fix this, like completely revamping prismatic pearls, but I'll say that for another day. Okay, I'm not too worried about, I agree, I'm not too worried about the price of rare shinies because most of the time people are shiny hunting, it's for their own personal accomplishment as opposed to selling it on the GTL, right? My last point is about RP or reward point prices, which have been slowly falling since I have started just after the 10-year anniversary. I don't know if I have many thoughts on this. I don't know if I don't buy RP. I don't really follow the RP economy. I know that it's tanked a lot and that's scary. I don't know why it's tanked. I don't know enough about the details. So I'm curious to see what Gingerman has to say. Just after the 10-year anniversary event, 1,000 RP prices were around 3 mil or so. Between then and Halloween, prices dropped to about 2.5 to 2.7 mil Pokeyen per 1,000 RP, which is pretty typical for most of 2022 and early 2023 outside of events. I noticed that by mid-2023, these prices started to drop below that 2.5 mil barrier. I always said for the longest time, the cheapest I had ever seen RP was around 2.2 mil. That was like back in the day, that was the cheapest I had ever seen. We have now blown past that. I compare the quote-unquote value I felt buying the 1,000 RP to, oh yeah, this is a crazy, I have heard this statistic is so crazy that I've heard this quoted. To compare the value I felt when I bought 1,000 RP to make some eggs back then compared to now in 2022, I could sell 1,000 RP for 2.7 mil Pokeyen and buy Ditto boxes at 180k each, getting 15 Ditto boxes for 1,000 RP or $10, right? Now in 2026, I could sell that same 1,000 RP for 1.7 mil, buy only 6 Ditto boxes down from 15 at 300k a box from 180k a box, a few years ago. I am now getting 40%. This is the craziest stat in the whole thing. You are now getting 40% of the same value that you got back in 2022. Even though new things have been introduced, such as shiny charms, premium lures, and chum buckets, prices still continue to drop. To me, the big reason is the amount of swiping these days compared to 2022, both more people and higher amounts. I'm not trying to judge anyone, but I've spent an absolute wedge on this game, and I have no regrets about it. But when I compare the amount of people I know as a rough average that swipe compared to other MMOs I've played, this game is in a world of its own with a much higher percentage of players swiping as their main money-making method. This is anecdotes. Anecdotally, I don't see that. Like, maybe it's because I interact with a more average player base, being like the casual average YouTuber for guides for the average player base. I think it's important to differentiate, I guess. Like, it's still a problem. I don't want to say it's not a problem. I'm speaking my anecdotal experiences versus his and the differences that those could compare. I think that if a bunch of high-level players are all swiping, that is a red flag, right? It's some are going to, and if you want to, more power to you. I'm not to judge anybody. I've spent, I think, $20 in PokeMMO over my entire PokeMMO career, and I take great pride in the fact like I've swiped very little, and I think I like to keep my in-game accomplishments separate from IRL. That's just me. That's not like that's just my personal. That's what I like to do for me. I don't care about. It's different for other people, right? The other thing is, I don't want people to think, I don't want new players to think, or the average Pokemon player to think that everybody is swiping, because I don't think this is true. I ran a poll on my my YouTube recently, and I think the math was like 90 to 95% of players swipe less than once a month, or like once or less a month. Like I don't like there's been a rise of the term free-to-play player, and I really don't like that term. I think it's victimizing. I think it's like, oh, look at us, the little guy, we're so small and powerless because I'm a free-to-play player. Oh, the reason I'm not making progress is because I'm free-to-play and everybody else swipes. Like, no, like most players don't swipe. High-end players, if that's a problem, I respect that, but from the poll that I ran, most players do not swipe. Like, I think that is I don't want that victimization push to happen where everybody feels small and powerless and weak because they think that everybody, yeah. I think it's really, really important. Obviously, it's not perfect data, of course. I wouldn't say don't trust at all. It's better than nothing. It's better than the data that you've collected. We can't. Oh, me when a data point disagrees with my sentiment, can't trust it. Wrong, bad. Me with no data at all. Actually, this other opinion is 100% correct. Like, come on. Come on, man. I don't like the most of us are free to play. I don't like there's no separation of like free to play and like swiping players. I think that like it pits us at odds for no reason, in my personal opinion. Anyways, I think the main solution to increase RP prices and their value is to help encourage more of the player base to farm instead giving players more variety to make Pokeyen, and they're more going to find something that they don't find so tedious. That combined with helping bring back passive money making methods would mean a lot of players would swipe for less RP and are more likely to buy off the GTL instead. To close this out, I think a lot of people are looking at the game and the economy and thinking people are farming dittos or people are farming on alts is the reason the economy is dying, rather than it being a system of a dying economy. I agree. We need to fix the system, not blame the players. I couldn't agree more. I don't think the economy can be fixed with one change. I sadly agree with this. Let me actually, that's a good one to write down. Can't fix economy with one change. I think back in 2020, if we acted quicker, like back in 2024, I think if we just nerfed alphas during like 2024 event season, I think we could have avoided a lot of this. I think it didn't have to be just one change, it could have just been one change back in 20. I think now it's more than one change. I agree. Sadly, I think it's gotten to that point, right? It would take multiple changes, both reducing the 31's incoming and item sinks, and a good bit of time for things to get back to a healthy spot. But I hope some of the general theory and ideas that I have presented might spark a conversation into what the game really needs. And as you could probably tell, I love this game and I love this community. And I think the majority of people wouldn't be here if they also didn't love the game. I'd love to see the game in a healthier state for everyone, newer players and hardcore players alike. If anyone has any ideas, criticisms, or general thoughts, I would love to hear them. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. With love, Ginger Matt. I love this post. I think it's fantastic. I agree with 95% of it. I think I took issue with like certain anecdotal things that could present large, like the free to play or the RP swiping thing. And then, but once again, that's just my anecdote versus his anecdote. I'm not saying he's wrong. It's just a personal, respectful disagreement with someone I heavily respect. Hopefully you can respect my opinion. That's the we've got to respect each other's opinions. The amount of times I see in YouTube comments of people being like, Patrouski, the only reason you think this is because you're stupid or you're dumb, or even not even fuck me. Like, who am I, right? The amount of times I see other people arguing with other people on the forums or comments of people like, oh, you're wrong because you just don't know enough, or you're like, if ever anyone is saying your opinion is wrong because you just don't know, this is a logical fallacy. This is appeal to authority. Do not respect these people. These people need to adapt to being open. You have to leave leeway. What's the only fifth seal in absolutes? Like, if someone were to make the argument that the PokeMMO economy is actually healthy, I would respectfully disagree. I would hear them out. I think there are positives once again for it, like like things being cheaper for newer players, but I would argue this, we can do those arguments, right? I would disagree with them, but I think it's a fair position to have. And you've got to let people, I know it's the internet, I know it's YouTube comments, I know I'm asking for a lot, okay? Let people have opposing views, let people present them respectfully, let the best arguments win out in the end, and just let people, the people are smart enough where the best arguments will win out if you just let them all be presented, right? So that's my thoughts. Amazing post. This is an hour-long video. Holy crap. Amazing post from Ginger Matt. Good feedback from Twitch chat along the way. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Check out his post. It will be linked in the description once again. Give him some love, some credit where credit's due. and I'm hoping we see some change. I think I agree with most of the stuff. It doesn't even need to necessarily be like the legendary sync doesn't need to exactly be you know, charcoals and consuming them. It could be something else. It could be something different, but I think it's a good step in the right direction. I think there are good ideas here, and the more important thing is the thought process. The solutions, in my opinion, are easier than like finding like the thought. And for the most part, a lot of it goes through. A lot of it is, what's it called? The devs just finding. They have the data. They know more information than us, right? They know more information than us. So we'll see. 1K RPs, you cannot stop. Pekanza, I'm serious. Let others disagree with you. Stop. I want to push back against this. I think saying things, this is extremism. Saying things like 1K RP has reached 1.68 mil, you cannot say the economy is healthy. I agree with you. I agree the economy is unhealthy. Let others disagree with you. Don't enter this realm of extremism saying that others can't. Don't ever say people can't disagree with you. I think it is really fucking dangerous. We need to push against that in PokeMMO. I need to get better at that. I want to work on that in 2026, and I want to keep improving, hopefully, personally. That's my thoughts, okay? So, yes, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you had some fun. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Dislike if you didn't. Subscribe. Follow on Twitch. You know, be respectful in the comments. This is a very sensitive topic. We're all very passionate about. That's all I can. Just please be respectful to one another in the comments. It's really, really important. Have a great day. Love PokeMMO. Despite all of these problems we've discussed here today, despite the economy being in shambles, in my opinion, I think that PokeMMO is the best Pokemon game ever made by far. I think it is the best Pokemon game ever made by far. And if I couldn't play PokeMMO, I don't even know what Pokemon game I would go to next. I might not even go to a Pokemon game. Despite all the problems, this game is still the best Pokemon game ever made, in my personal opinion. And I think we got to appreciate that while we have it, you know, not that it's going away anywhere, but, you know, like, just appreciate what you do have, you know, because there are a lot of positives alongside the negatives. Thank you guys for watching. Once again, I'm not going to redo the whole outro. Have a great day. I'll see you later. If you want to go above and beyond, support me, PayPal, Venmo, Twitch Primes, you guys know the drill. Have a great day. Enjoy PokeMMO. I'll see you later. The final piece of Reno.